morning. Thank you all for coming. My name is John Gasky. I'm a lieutenant at the Warren Police Department and the Public Information Officer. Before we get started, I'll give you some facts, and then we'll get into more of a detailed conversation about this incident. This incident occurred on Saturday, May 24th, 2025. The original location of the attempted traffic stop was on Van Dyke and Miller Street, which is just south of 14 Mile. The traffic stop started at approximately 9:23 p.m. The reason for the traffic stop, which will be explained in more detail, was for excessive speeds and reckless driving. The ending location of this incident was 9 Mile and Van Dyke, where a traffic crash occurred. The arrested and charged, Anthony Eugene Douglas Grier, Grier Jr., 33-year-old resident of Detroit. Deceased, Wendy Drew, 71 years old, of Hazel Park. We're here today to provide an update and share information with the public regarding an incident involving a police pursuit that results in the death of a 71-year-old female. We understand and respect the public's right to know this information. There's no doubt that this is a very serious and emotional incident for the family, the officers, and the community as a whole. This is the last press conference we wish to be doing on these. We do not take these situations lightly. As you're all likely aware, last Saturday evening, the Warren Police Department engaged in a vehicle pursuit, which started on Van Dyke and Miller. This pursuit concluded when the suspect was involved in a traffic crash at 9 Mile and Van Dyke. The suspect fled the scene of the crash on foot and was quickly apprehended by officers. Tragically, this traffic crash did result in the death of 71-year-old Wendy Drew of Hazel Park. The entire Warren Police Department has extended our heartfelt condolences to Ms. Drew's husband, family, and friends. We're here today in connection with the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office to talk about some of the facts of the case, including the murder charges issued against Mr. Grier. It's important to note we will be playing a video. Every fully marked Warren patrol car is equipped with a forward-facing dash camera. The dash camera captures numerous pieces of data, including when lights and sirens are activated. In addition, all Warren patrol officers are equipped with a forward-facing body-worn camera. Every vehicle pursuit at the Warren Police Department is monitored in real time via shift supervisors, via radio, as well as Axon. We will now discuss some of the investigative findings of this case. The facts of this case show that on May 24th, 2025, at approximately 9:23 p.m., 2 Warren patrol officers in full uniform and a fully marked patrol car were on routine patrol on Van Dyke near 13 Mile across the street from the GM Tech Center. While conducting routine patrol, officers' attention was drawn to a black Chrysler 300 traveling northbound on Van Dyke. The radar unit inside the patrol car clocked the Chrysler 300 speed at 72 miles per hour in a posted 40 mile per hour zone. In response to this vehicle driving recklessly at nearly double the speed limit, the officers turned around to catch up to the Chrysler with the goal of initiating a routine, ordinary traffic stop. On Van Dyke near Miller, officers activated their overhead emergency equipment to effect a stop on the Chrysler. The Chrysler failed to stop and quickly accelerated away from officers. Officers then initiated a vehicle pursuit and notified dispatch as well as other officers in the area who responded to assist. Part of this immediate assistance included officers almost immediately requesting the assistance of the Michigan State Police Air Unit to respond to the scene to assist. Warren Police Dispatch indicated that the Michigan State Police helicopter was en route to provide air support. The suspect traveled briefly into Sterling Heights before turning around and traveling southbound and Van Dyke in and through the city of Warren. During the pursuit, the suspect disregarded a total of 6 red lights at intersections. Many of these intersections, including 12 Mile and Van Dyke and 11 Mile and Van Dyke, were blocked by officers of Warren and Centerline Police Department so as to minimize the risk to the public. Despite this extreme law enforcement presence, the suspect refused to stop. At 10 Mile and Van Dyke, officers also deployed stop sticks with the goal of deflating the suspect's tires, hoping to bring the pursuit to a peaceful end. The suspect was able to evade the stop sticks and continue fleeing from officers. Again, despite this, he did not stop. Another patrol car was positioned at 8 Mile and Van Dyke with yet another pair of stop sticks with the goal of bringing this pursuit to an end. At the intersection of 9 Mile and Van Dyke, the suspect disregarded the red traffic signal and struck Ms. Drew's vehicle, a Pontiac Touring. This impact also caused a Jeep Cherokee with another female occupant to be damaged. Thankfully, this victim was not injured. The suspect then exited his Chrysler and fled briefly on foot before being apprehended by officers. The Warren Fire Department transported Ms. Drew to an area hospital with officers blocking intersections along the way to expedite the transport. Sadly, Ms. Drew was pronounced deceased a short time later. As I stated earlier, the suspect, 33-year-old Anthony Grier of Detroit, was arrested on scene without further incident. The Warren Police Traffic Crash Reconstruction Unit led the comprehensive investigation into this incident. Like every felony arrest, The facts of this case were presented to the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office for review. Yesterday, the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office reviewed the case and charged Grier with count 1, murder, second degree, a life felony. Count 2, fleeing and elude, first degree, a 15-year felony. Count 3, resisting and obstructing police, a 2-year felony. Prosecutor Lucida will speak more in depth on the charges. Grier was arraigned yesterday afternoon by Judge Chupa of the 37th District Court, where a not guilty plea was entered. Grier was denied bond and remanded to custody pending his next court date on June 12, 2025. Mr. Grier is entitled to due process and, like any defendant charged, maintains the presumption of innocence until proven guilty. At the time of this incident, Grier showed prior convictions for operating on a suspended license, receiving concealing stolen property, and attempted fleeing and eluding out of another jurisdiction. Grier showed 15 prior citations for speeding and other traffic offenses. He also had a March 2025 arrest out of the city of Warren for carrying a concealed weapon, a firearm, which was active at court. As of this time, neither drugs nor alcohol appear to be a factor. We will now play a video presentation regarding this incident. The video presentation will be emailed out at the conclusion of the press conference.
1050, 1050, 1050.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Pete Lucido, the Macomb County Prosecutor. First, I'd like to add my condolences to not only the entire Drew family, but also her husband of over 50 years losing his wife. The children, 5 of them, 5 boys, who lost their mother. The 23 grandchildren that lost their grandmother. This family has to live with that. And it's tragic that it was a senseless loss of life, senseless. But that being said, every day the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office is charged with a duty to go ahead and charge as they see those crimes that are committed. In this case here, the charges that were read, second-degree murder, as well as the 15-year fleeing and eluding first degree, as well as resisting and obstructing officers, the 2-year. Were charged according to the laws of the state and will be enforced to the fullest extent of the law. In this case here, there was a total disregard of life being on that road, driving on sidewalks, in and out of traffic, middle lane, at a high rate of speed, in the commission of a felony. How much more can I tell you? This is all too often that this is happening, not just here in the city of Warren, but throughout the entire county. And what makes me irritable is the fact that people disrespecting the law as well as the life of others that took place here. These charges will be brought to the fullest extent of the law. There's an opportunity to be presumed innocent until proven guilty, like any other case that's brought. In the release that we sent out to everyone, it's obvious in this case here that this could have been avoided by stopping the vehicle when they activated the overheads. This could have been avoided. I'm sure the commissioner is going to speak to that. But I trust that everybody in this room knows that we have an active duty. That's what we're charged with constitutionally and statutorily. And we intend to go ahead and pursue these charges like any other charge that's brought in the Macomb County Prosecutor's Office. Thank you for being here today, and I'm standing ready to answer any questions after Commissioner, in this case, has completed his discussion.
Thank you, Prosecutor Lucido. Eric Hawkins, Police Commissioner, City of Warren, ERICHAWKINS. First and foremost, I extend my deepest condolences on behalf of every member of this police department to Ms. Drew's family and friends. This is a somber moment, a tragedy, an outcome that no officer ever wants to see. We understand the gravity of this moment. The loss of Ms. Drew has reverberated throughout this department. I privately express my condolences to her family, and I want to publicly let them know that our thoughts and our prayers are with them as they go through this very difficult time. I thank Prosecutor Lucido and his staff for sending a strong message to those who decide to disregard the lawful commands of police officers and blatantly and egregiously endanger the lives of others. I want to make this perfectly clear. Anthony Grier killed Miss Drew, and the entire community is thankful to Prosecutor Lucido for holding Mr. Grier accountable. Police pursuits are a polarizing topic. They're challenging because pursuits are among the most high-risk actions that officers can engage in. And like most major polarizing issues in this country, well-meaning and reasonable people can see this issue differently. Even within the field of law enforcement, accomplished law enforcement professionals across this country often disagree on the engagement principles with respect to police pursuits. For example, most police departments across this country allow pursuits to varying degrees. Some departments are more restrictive, while others allow more discretion by officers and supervisors. There are departments in Washington State, California, Oakland, California, most notably, some departments in Florida who have loosened the restrictions on police pursuits. And the theme that we see consistently with those who are loosening restrictions are concerns about individuals committing crimes with what they feel is impunity in our communities. And then you have others in the Midwest and on the East Coast who have actually tightened restrictions on pursuits. And the common theme we see with those are that they are trying to have a balance between putting individuals and taking individuals off the street who are causing mayhem and destruction, and also the safety of those while we're engaged in those sorts of activities. And the point of all of this is that there really is no consensus on what the threshold should be for the initiation and the continuation of a police pursuit. It varies from municipality to municipality, from person to person, from law enforcement executive to law enforcement executive. And a difference in perspective on police pursuits does not mean that someone is necessarily right and someone is necessarily wrong. It just means that this is an extremely complex issue with nuance, and it requires an understanding of opposing perspectives. But regardless of where people lie on this spectrum and where they stand on this issue, everyone agrees that the decision to initiate a pursuit requires the utmost discretion and reasonableness based on a whole host of factors, with the safety of the community, particularly uninvolved persons, being the paramount concern. In the Warren Police Department, we allow our officers to initiate pursuits under certain conditions. We have a policy that gives clear expectations of officers during these pursuits. A policy, by the way, that has been vetted and approved through the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police accreditation process, a process that requires that all policies, including, of course, pursuit policies, are within best practices in the industry. The safety of innocent people is prioritized, and every officer and supervisor is expected to be well versed in this policy. Every pursuit, like Lieutenant Gajewski alluded to, is monitored in real time by a supervisor. It's reviewed afterwards by administration, and we want to ensure that there is compliance with our policies and procedures. Violations of our policy are subject to discipline based on the totality of the circumstances. We're a learning organization, so we review all of our pursuits, whether they are within, outside, or within the gray area of our policy. And if there are opportunities for adjustments in our policy, we take the opportunity to make those adjustments and modifications. And so, having said all that, here are my observations after a little over 5 months as police commissioner here in the city of Warren. And I'm aware of the perceptions. I'm aware that there is a perception that there is an increasing amount of pursuits within the city of Warren. I'm aware that there is a perception that our officers don't use the appropriate discretion with these pursuits. I am aware of the perception that the majority of our pursuits are out of policy. But here are the facts. Pursuits are actually down 50% year to date compared to this time period last year. Roughly half of those pursuits that have been initiated have been terminated by either the officer or supervisor. And the overwhelming majority of those pursuits were found to be within policy and procedure. So what that tells me is that we are clearly trending in a positive direction with respect to this high-risk activity. Are we where we want to be right now? I think that if you would ask our command officers and even our rank and file officers, they would probably say that there's improvement that can be made. But there's irrefutable data and evidence that shows that this city and this police department has made substantial strides in terms of addressing these issues with this very high-risk activity. But here's another observation that I've made. The amount of people who blatantly disregard the lawful commands of police officers and refuse to stop their vehicles is absolutely astonishing. For every police pursuit that we have, there is a suspect who has decided to use his or her vehicle as a weapon against innocent people in our communities. That, to me, is absolutely astonishing. There is work to be done at a lot of levels to address that. There are some legislative opportunities. There are, of course, some public service announcement and public information things that can be done. But the message has to be clearly sent that this is not a police problem. This is a people problem. People who have refused to comply with lawful orders. People who refuse to have a sanctity of life underlying philosophy when they are out in the streets. That has to be addressed. We will do our part. We will continue to train. We will continue to make our officers aware of some of the challenges with this extremely high-risk activity. We'll continue to trend in a positive direction with respect to what we're seeing with our officers internally. But this pursuit that we're talking about today remains under investigation, just like every other pursuit that we investigate and that we engage in. If there are violations of our policy, the appropriate corrective actions will be taken, including a training component if necessary. In this case, our officers, as Lieutenant Gajewski alluded to, use all of the tools available to attempt to stop this person from creating the carnage that he created. We used stop sticks. Intersections were blocked. We requested a state police helicopter. Mr. Grier consciously decided to continue. He consciously made a choice to expose the community to harm through his dangerous actions. Mr. Grier, as Prosecutor Lucido alluded, had every opportunity to stop his vehicle. Miss Drew lost her life because of his selfish and criminal behaviors. In closing, the clear and unequivocal message that we're sending to those who decide to commit crimes in the city of Warren is this. The Warren Police Department will continue to use every available resource and every reasonable and lawful tactic to track you down and bring you to justice. Departmentally, we're dedicated to employing all of the effective and responsible strategies for addressing this. And again, our condolences go out to the family of Ms. Drew and her friends and other loved ones that were impacted. Thank you, and we are available for any questions that you may have.
What speeds did the officers reach, and how long was the pursuit?
The pursuit was somewhere in the area of about 5 minutes. I don't have the exact speeds, but the speeds at certain points during the pursuit reached over 100 miles per hour. Yes, ma'am.
I know it's different every time, but at what point do officers decide, hey, I'm just going to call this off and let the suspect go?
And it's a tough decision. It's a in the moment decision. We give our officers and our supervisors a great deal of discretion with these pursuits. But with that discretion comes a great deal of training and a great deal of awareness as well about the potential risk to not only them but the public as well. And so it's a judgment call. But while our pursuits are occurring, they're being monitored by a supervisor in the station. They're being monitored by supervisors who are actually on the street as well, and also the officers have an obligation while they're engaged in the pursuits to be aware of some of the risk and make a judgment call at certain points during the pursuit if appropriate to call the pursuit off. And so it very much is a case by case basis. It's very difficult to get into the mind of a person, of our officers, although they're trained, they're professionals, but they're human. And when you have humans who are in high stress situations, whose hearts are in the right place, they're trying to stop a person who's endangering the public. We've all seen stories recently of reckless drivers, in the Metro Detroit area who are engaged in these egregious acts that are endangering folks in our community. And folks in the community are telling law enforcement loud and clear that they want those sorts of things to be addressed. Now, there has to be some constraints, obviously. There are some guidelines that we have to abide by when we're addressing those. But I just say that to say that in the moment, we have to give our officers some latitude and some understanding when they're making these decisions out in the field. Yes, sir.
I apologize in advance. I don't mean the Monday morning quarterback, so I just want to put that out there. But because it's a difficult topic that you've addressed, but when you talk about we have a policy with clear expectations vetted by the chiefs of police, but then understandably it's an officer's call in the moment. It's the difficulty of the job. Appreciating you may not be able to line item what that policy is, how do you gauge whether or not this was conducted properly, as opposed to a layperson may think 100 miles per hour may be the cap, got to call it off? It doesn't seem like there's a hard and fast policy versus what an officer has to judge individually on a case-by-case basis.
So the
policy question is what I'm after.
Sure. And there are a couple of trains of thoughts with our policies, our pursuit policies. And as I mentioned before, when you have certain municipalities that have very restrictive policies, then it leaves hardly any discretion on the part of officers. That's one train of thought. You have other departments who have a less restrictive policy with respect to police pursuits. And those policies leave a great deal of discretion and latitude for the officers in the heat of the moment in making decisions on whether to initiate or continue a pursuit. So I think the way I'm taking your question, this really goes to why do some departments have a policy that clearly says that you can only chase for certain offenses and that's it, very, very restrictive? And why do you have other departments who have decided to have a policy that is a lot less restrictive? And it really is it's a case-by-case, municipality-by-municipality decision. Now, in the city of Warren, we do have a very comprehensive policy that grants a great deal of discretion to officers and supervisors. There's no bright line in most cases on when a pursuit should be terminated or not. But there are a number of factors that we require our officers to consider when these pursuits are either initiated or continued. Some of those factors are as close to a bright line as you can get, and some leave some discretion. And so when we review these, we're looking at the actions of the officers in the context of the policy that we have in place. And with the discretion that they are allowed, would a reasonable officer under those circumstances, with that type of policy that we have in place, under the conditions and circumstances that they were dealing with, would a reasonable officer conduct their actions and their tactics in the same way? It's not. There are no easy answers with it, but I will say, and I think this bears worth repeating. The policy that we have in place is a policy that has been vetted by the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police during their accreditation process. And when we go through this accreditation process, all of our policies are looked at, including, of course, our pursuit policy, to ensure that that policy, whatever it is, whether it's a more restrictive or a less restrictive policy, is that policy within best practices in law enforcement. And it was deemed that our policy is actually within the best practices in law enforcement right now. Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner, can you talk about the officers who were involved and their status? Do we know how long they've been here, and are they on leave, or what is their situation?
So per policy, the officers are on administrative leave at this point, while we conduct an internal investigation that we do with all of these sorts of incidents. So right now, those officers are on administrative leave. I'll have Lieutenant Gajewski get you the years of service that those individual officers have on the department.
And that's a paid administrative leave
Yes.
right now?
Yes.
How many officers did you say?
Two officers. Yes, sir.
Will this case make you guys reconsider that policy?
Every pursuit. And that's what's, I wouldn't say unique about Warren, but it's certainly something that we're very, very proud of, and with respect to review of incidents like this. If it was a clear-cut in-policy pursuit, where there was no question whatsoever that we knew it was in policy, we still do a review. And even in those that are clear-cut within policy, there are some things that we find that we can do to improve or adjust or modify. This, of course, is one that we will conduct that same sort of review of. But we take every pursuit as an opportunity to see if there's room for improvement. Yes, ma'am.
Do you know, Commissioner, if this is, so far, I don't know how deep you are into the look of this, does it appear to be following procedure at this point?
Don't know. There are some things that we have to look at. We have to, there are some conditions with respect to decisions with speed and things like that we have to look at. You know, I think the gentleman here asked what the speeds were with this pursuit, and you know, when we have speeds that are over 100 miles per hour, then certainly that's something that gives us cause for concern. So it doesn't necessarily mean that it's out of policy just because of that, but that's certainly a factor that we need to look at to see if it was appropriate. But we have not gotten through the internal review of this yet. Yes, sir.
Commissioner,
Mm-hmm.
you had mentioned that pursuits in the city of Warren were down 50% compared to the same period last year. What exactly are those numbers, and what do you attribute to the decrease in the number of pursuits?
I don't have the exact numbers with me, but right now we're somewhere in the area of 60 pursuits, and it was roughly double that last year. You know, I attribute this to officers and commanders and supervisors and administrators in the department really doing a deep dive and really being aware of some of the issues associated with pursuits, making sure that when we initiate a pursuit or continue a pursuit, that it's appropriate. You know, there's training involved in this. And so I think there's a general awareness within the department that there are opportunities, not just with pursuits, but with other things as well. You know, there are opportunities to improve in a lot of different areas, and this is an area where there may be an opportunity. So,
Thank you, sir.
yes.
I'd like to go back to policy real quick. My final questions. When we talk about clear expectations on policy, appreciating you can't necessarily give a line item because offenders would then utilize that. But are there circumstances where Warren police officers are told you cannot pursue?
Yes. Yes. There are some circumstances where it is not appropriate to pursue. So we don't have a policy that says that for every circumstances, no matter what, a pursuit is permissible. I mean, there's clearly some circumstances where there may be some other means of addressing the situation. So we have those things that are outlined within our policy.
My last question would be in regard to, we're asking officers to be perfect all the time.
Yeah.
It's an impossible bar, but yet when we talk about these topics, you can't outright address them because then it would allow offenders more liberty. The balance of the fact that people's focus should be on the fact that the offenders are the ones still creating the situation.
Yeah. And that's what leads to a great deal of frustration with us. We're humans. We can give our officers the best training. They can have years and years of experience, and sometimes we may have human lapses. Sometimes, I mean, it's just a part of being human. But we have to take that into account when we're assessing officer behavior, when we're assessing tactics. It doesn't mean that simply because we're human we can make egregious mistakes. I mean, there are some consequences, and there have been some times when we have had to institute some discipline for not only pursuits but other things that have been outside of policy. And so I'm not standing here saying that every single time we engage in these sorts of high-risk actions that we do it absolutely right, absolutely every time. I mean, that's an unreasonable standard. And an impossible standard for us to have for our officers. But when I look at these, I try to look at this from a holistic standpoint and from a human standpoint. You know, what are we expecting of these professionals that we have? We give them a lot. Community says that they don't want folks recklessly driving and creating mayhem in our streets. So when we give the direction to our officers to address that, we've got to understand that they're going to address it as highly trained professionals, but they're human. That will occasionally make some mistakes. But what I will say, and I mentioned this in my remarks, is I am impressed with the fact that upon review of all of the pursuits that we've had, very few of those have been deemed to be outside of policy. And so we're talking the vast, overwhelming majority of pursuits that, by the way, are 50% lower than they were last year, but even the vast majority of those, we're finding that they're within the guidelines of a policy that has been vetted and approved through the Michigan Association of Chiefs of Police. And so I think that is something that this city and that this police department can be proud of. Extremely challenging circumstances out there. We have folks who are concerned about law and order. We have folks who are fed up with individuals who feel that they can come into communities and commit crimes with impunity. You have people who are fed up with the idea that somebody can come and commit a crime in a city and simply drive away and not worry about any intervention with a police officer. People are legitimately concerned about that. And they're asking us to address it. And we've got to be responsible. We've got to make sure we're professional. But when we're assessing the actions of our officers, we also have to be understanding. Yes, ma'am.
Again, in the spirit of transparency, we were watching the video, and was it edited? I know we didn't see the crash, but was it edited in any way before that?
You want to talk about the
So
edit part of it, John?
Yeah, we did do some edits. That's done obviously for investigative integrity, and also for streamlining the pursuit. Obviously, lasted about 5 minutes in total length. So this is the video that we feel appropriate to release at this time.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I have one. Does the state legislature take some type of action to include maybe mandatory prison time for those who between the
I sure wish and hope that the state legislature, as Commissioner Hawkins indicated, takes effort in what's going on. These kind of crimes are being committed not just here in Warren, but throughout the entire state. And as a result, there's an opportunity here, as Commissioner Hawkins indicated, to go ahead and put a stiffer penalty, because it seems not to work just to follow the law. And lawful command of a police officer is when the bubbles go on and the sirens go on, that's telling you, go ahead and pull over, not go ahead and flee. And to a point where it caused this woman's death. It caused the death of the individual, Ms. Drew.
Procedure.
Yeah, is there a possibility that any other charges can be filed? I know the incident, or the chase is under review internally. Is it possible that any of the officers could face criminal charges, or is that something that you would determine once the internal review is over?
The Macomb County Prosecutor acts on information, evidence, and reports. If we never see a report, if we never see any evidence or information that's brought to the office, we can't act. So it's crystal clear that I act upon what is brought to me by law enforcement. And in addition, in this case here, it's an ongoing investigation. Whether or not additional charges may be brought is based on the evidence that could be found as a result of this information.
So it's possible.
Anything's possible in the world of criminal justice.
Last questions, Erica.
I just want to clarify, you said you didn't know how the speeds in the pursuit? The officer's speeds?
So I don't know the exact speeds that the officers had, but like I explained to the gentleman here, what I do know is that the speeds had reached over 100 miles per hour at certain points during that pursuit.
Certain points? Do you,
Yes.
Okay, so you,
Yep.
okay.
And how many, I apologize if this is going to answer, how many officers? I know we saw what I believe to be just the one vehicle that we were seeing the dash cam.
Yeah, two officers. Yeah, a two-person vehicle. Two officers in one vehicle.
In one vehicle,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
When
All right, yes.
supervisors are monitoring this, obviously they're listening to radio traffic. Are they able to watch the cameras in real time, or is that not until they come back?
Yes, they can monitor in real time the camera footage. Yes.
And then there's a last question, but is there anything in regard to the suspect as to why he fled? Meaning, was there any situation he was involved in that you know of, or the motivation for him?
That is the head scratcher with this. No outstanding warrants that we know of. Had a driver's license that was valid. I mean, of course, he had a criminal history that indicated that this was something that he's been involved in before, and he has a disregard for law and order in that. But other than that, it was nothing remarkable. So thank you.